Ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, good afternoon from Vienna. My name is Artem Lazarev, and I'm a program officer at the United Nations Office of Drugs and Crimes CBRN Terrorism Prevention Program of the Terrorism Prevention Branch. I'm delighted to welcome you today to our second event of the virtual speaker series on the International Convention for the Suppression of Acts of Nuclear Terrorism. The series is conducted by the CBRN Terrorism Prevention Program and funded by the Government of Canada. Today's event, as you may have seen in the announcement, will be focusing on international cooperation on nuclear forensics and the International Convention for the Suppression of Acts of Nuclear Terrorism, which we will refer to for brevity as ICSANT. I should say that we are extremely lucky today and pleased to have with us not one, not two, but three internationally recognized experts in the area of nuclear forensics: Dr. Andrei Apostol, Dr. Eva Seles, and Dr. Edward Van Zalen. So Dr. Andrei Apostol is a judicial expert in the field of nuclear security. He initiated the establishment of the first Romanian nuclear forensics laboratory and its approval at the highest national level. Dr. Apostol was elected as co-chair of the Nuclear Forensics Working Group of the Global Initiative to Combat Nuclear Terrorism, or GICNT, in 2021. He has been working in the field of nuclear security and non-proliferation for the last 15 years, being involved in supporting numerous criminal investigations of interdicted nuclear or other radioactive material. Currently, Dr. Apostol is the Director of Nuclear Fuel Cycle and Non-Proliferation at Raw Power Nuclear, supporting the implementation of the first small modular reactor project in Romania. Dr. Eva Seles is a nuclear forensics expert and special scientific advisor on nuclear security at the Center for Energy Research in Hungary, working in the field of national security strategies and supporting regional and international projects related to nuclear security, including radiological, crime scene management, and nuclear forensics. Prior to this post, she worked at the International Atomic Energy Agency since 2020, where she was responsible for the crime scene management and nuclear forensics unit at the Division of Nuclear Security. Prior to that, at the Hungarian Research Institute, where she worked for 14 years, Dr. Seles was the head of the Hungarian National Nuclear Forensics Laboratory and the IAEA Collaborating Center for Nuclear Forensics. She was also active in the field of radiological crime scene management since 2016, with the development and training of a national procedure for the radiological crime scene management in cooperation with the Hungarian police. Since 2008, Dr. Van Zalen is a program manager on CBRN at the Netherlands Forensics Institute, which he joined in 1991. This program is focused on both the development of CBRN forensics methods, as well as international cooperation working on these subjects with organizations such as IAEA, Interpol, Europol, OPCW, and UNODC. In this position, Dr. Van Zalen was in charge of developing the Dutch gift basket for the Nuclear Security Summit of 2014, was a coordinator of the EU-funded Framework 7 project, Generic Integrated Forensic Toolbox, and the vice chair of the Forensics Working Group of the OPCW's Scientific Advisory Board, among others. I'd also mention that in 2021, Dr. Van Zalen was elected as co-chair of the Nuclear Forensics Working Group of the Global Initiative to Combat Nuclear Terrorism, together with Dr. Andrei Apostol. So before we start, I would like you to know that if you have any questions to the speakers, please send them after or during the event to the following email address, which I will share with you just in a second, so you can see it on your screens. It's unodc-ixant@un.org. And we will forward these questions to all our experts, and we'll receive their answers and forward them back to you. So I hope you had a chance to take a snapshot of this slide. I will show it at the end of our meeting as well. So let's start with a short description of ICSANT, this International Convention for the Suppression of Acts of Nuclear Terrorism. It was adopted in 2005 and entered into force in 2007. This Sunday, 18th of February, the number of parties to it will reach 124, with Palau being the newest member of the ICSANT family. I should add that we at the UNODC were quite honored to work closely with this country, with the government of Palau, to promote the benefits of being party to ICSANT and facilitate countries' adherence to the convention. So, ICSANT, getting back to ICSANT, ICSANT provides a framework for collaboration among states in addressing nuclear terrorism and other criminal acts involving nuclear and other radioactive material. Specifically, ICSANT requires parties to criminalize certain conduct, such as, for example, the unlawful and intentional use of radioactive sources or devices to cause death, substantial damage to property or environment, or serious bodily injury. Parties to ICSANT are also required to establish jurisdiction over these offenses and either prosecute or extradite alleged offenders. The third major area of ICSANT, which is of most important for us today, is international cooperation. It can take many forms, starting from extradition, preventive measures, to mutual legal assistance, information exchange, and so-called post-crisis situation, including cooperation on nuclear forensics. So at this point, I would like to turn to our expert and ask them the following question. What is nuclear forensics in your understanding? So what is the role of nuclear forensics and its main elements?
Yes, thank you, Artyom. I think nuclear forensics role is getting more and more important. It's more and more important nowadays, especially when there's interdicted materials which that's radioactive, or when portals at the harbors or at the borders do sign there's radioactive materials present in a cargo or in a car or whatever. That's also when, in my personal opinion, the crime scene starts. In my opinion, we will always start with the crime scene, and we can always make it less in the future. But the final start to having a crime scene, that means that we will start radiological crime scene management, and then in such a way that all the work that has been done in those few moments, few hours, is done in such a way that it's admissible in the court, so that we can use the outcome of this starting investigation in court also. The role of nuclear forensics at start is also important in such a way that you, with the measurements, you can do any categorization, tell what type of material it is, so that you can take your measures or your precautions for protecting yourself or the environment. So it's, in my opinion, the nuclear forensic then is a combination of starting the crime scene management, also starting safety measures or safety precautions in that way. Sorry. Which means that you do need, when you've recognized that there's radioactive material present, you need additional experts at the crime scene or the incident scene to start the further investigation. This should be done by experts, in my opinion, and not by crime scene officers that do not have a background on radioactivity or nuclear materials. That's so I think so. That's one of the starts for the RCSM.
Thank you, Ed, for setting this in such a comprehensive way. I'll just follow up. So from my perspective, following on your question, Artyom, what is the role of nuclear forensics? I think it has really multiple roles. When I first started being involved in this subject about, 14 years ago, in my first case, I thought the top priority of nuclear forensics is to, analyze the sample and find its origin. Where is it coming from? And I thought so for quite some time until I started being involved in more and more, to support the investigation of nuclear or radiological crimes. And then I realized there's also an important role which has to do with the investigation. I would say I realized that it's the origin identification is a top priority. It's a high priority. However, the top priority was related to finding the truth and supporting the investigation. What happened? Who did it? And especially important, it was the important step was to prove the intent of the criminal. Because you all know we cannot see the radiation, we cannot taste the radiation. So whenever somebody is found with radioactive or nuclear material, you have also to prove that this person knew that he was, committing a crime, and that's quite challenging. So nuclear forensics can help criminal investigation bodies find the truth about specific incidents, where, why, how, when the crime was committed, and support the investigation with the criminal proceedings in such a way, that all this work is done procedurally according to the law, according to the procedural code, and that evidence that is being collected is then admissible in the court of law. And that is the only way to do so is to act accordingly to the criminal proceedings that is implemented in a certain state. And evidence, as you all know, is de facto and de jure any factual element which serves to establish the existence of an offense, identify the perpetrators, and establish factum circumstances of the case. Beside any all these other additional roles which are related to state security and so on, the main goal from my experience of nuclear forensics or main objective is to find out what happened and then make sure that those who are involved and proved guilty face a just resolution of the proceedings. And that's how I see nuclear forensics from experience. Over.
Thank you both, Ed and Andrei, for this comprehensive explanation of the role of nuclear forensics. And I would like to join to Andrei's what you mentioned, the role out of the nuclear forensics has multiple roles, and you mentioned the state security too. So my opinion is that, and following the experiences, yes, nuclear forensics, the key role of nuclear forensics is to support the investigation, the criminal investigation. Absolutely, that is true. But it's another key role of nuclear forensics, which was mentioned partly by Andrei. And it's and most of the experts or scientists are not thinking on this role of the forensics, which belongs more a little bit to the regulatory bodies and not absolutely for the law enforcement area. This is the state security, or another way why the origin assessment is very important, to know the origin of the material or where the material was diverted or something about the smuggling route, because the material should be returned under regulatory control. And a part of this returning is to identify or to determine or to find the original owner or licensee of the material. And in very often is the task of the regulatory body to contact the original licensee, especially if this license is in another state, in order to transport back the material to them or to the original owner. Another aspect is nuclear forensics with this tool to find the origin or where was the material diverted can identify vulnerabilities at border checkpoints and weaknesses at the physical protection system of a facility or transport. And in this way, the authorities has the chance and the possibility to verify the system, the physical protection systems, and to strengthen the physical protection. And all of these tools and the role of the forensics can cause a preventive effect of nuclear forensics. So it's not only respond to an event, but also can prevent any events if we have these tools to identify the weaknesses, and we can strengthen the physical protection. And another tool or function of forensics is the deterrence, because if a state has a well-working, effective, visible forensic capability, that state is mainly or maybe not a potential target for terrorists. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for a very exhaustive comments on the role and the main elements of forensics. Just a follow-up question on that. So how is nuclear forensics different from traditional forensics?
Well, the big thing with nuclear forensics is that you're working with radioactive material in such a way, like also Eva and Andre stated. We are using a lot of, in nuclear forensics, we're using a lot of analytical methods to determine the origin of the material in such a way that you do need national nuclear forensics libraries to compare the unknown with the known sources you might have in your country. I think that's the big difference. I think there are a lot of parallels too. For me, I'm traditional forensics. My background is traditional forensics, and I see nuclear forensics as one of the tools I do have to solve a crime, that to investigate a crime that has been committed. In such a way, we're trying to, with the entire scope of forensic methods, we try to build a narrative of the incident that occurred. And one of the questions, of course, is the nuclear forensics part of it, for what's the material, where does it come from? But also other questions, like Andre stated, also from the who, the where, the when, and the how. Those are questions that can also be answered by what I would call traditional forensics methods. You know, comparing DNA profiles from a known and an unknown gives you an idea of which person has been involved. Same for fingerprints or any other traditional forensics methods. So the other parallel is also what we do a lot in traditional forensic methods. We compare materials to relate them to a source. For instance, you can investigate paints on different ways. Not only the color, but also the element composition and that kind of data to compare to a known with an unknown, paint or glass, whatever you are investigating. And that's the same parallel we do within nuclear forensics. We do all kinds of analytical methods on it, and we compare the outcome with the unknown, with the known, with the set of known samples to say, well, this is the source of the material. So in that way, there are differences, but there are lots of parallels too. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed, for this very important comment. So, from your comments, and we can infer that nuclear forensics is quite a complex issue, and it can be supposed that countries may face certain challenges in developing and implementing nuclear forensics capabilities. Would you please share the major of challenges in this field? Thank you.
If I can start to answer this question, challenges. Yes, this is a very important question, and very important to speak about challenges. And there are several facing with to establish and implement nuclear forensic capabilities in a state or in a country. It's mainly in the past, but also still nowadays, forensic was started to be established somehow on the scientific level, which is not a surprise because forensic is science, forensic science, and should belong to the science, however, because the science is the cornerstone of nuclear forensics. And in many countries, there's some scientists who are interested in the topic and started to be familiar, start to develop methods and establish capabilities. But as forensics should support the criminal investigation, it should be connected to the law enforcement organizations and authorities. And this platform is one of the challenge is the legal framework behind how to delegate nuclear forensics officially, for example, to a research institute legally based on a law or governmental decree which should be established in a country. And in many countries, it means that the forensic establishment of forensic starts not from the top level, from the leadership decision-making level, but scientific level. So, and how to say, in this platform, we can arrive to another challenge, or the next challenge is the missing communication and information sharing. in many countries it's possible to experience that there are forensic resources, forensic capabilities, but the relevant competent authorities and national stakeholders are not informed. They don't have connection between the forensic measurements and the prosecution area or other law enforcement area. So this is something which should be strengthened with, for example, national exercises or other tools. We will maybe mention this later. But this is a big challenge, I think, the communication and information sharing to know the resources and also gaps in the system. One more point what I would like to mention is the techniques. My experience is that sometimes it's a kind of misunderstanding from the countries and scientists, and maybe kind of misinformation from the international organizations on that. What does it mean, nuclear forensics, and what kind of capabilities are needed for nuclear forensics? So in many countries, or I met many scientists in the field who thought that nuclear forensics is a branch of fancy analytical techniques, and especially beginner countries had this feeling they will never have forensic capabilities because it's very challenging to establish the high-level analytical techniques. This is not really true, because in the practice, to start the forensic examination and to support the investigation, sometimes basic techniques are enough, and there are other possibilities, international cooperation, how to support the examination on another way. And last point, and I finished this, my opinion or my speech there, is another point is how to, if we have analytical data, how we can find the origin of the material, which is the database or library question. How can we compare the data with other data? This is also a big challenge because many countries doesn't have a library system, National Nuclear Forensic Library. That's all from my side, just some key points for challenges. Over to the others.
Well, thank you, Eva. I fully agree with what you stated. The challenges we do face, in my opinion, is that countries start. It happens quite often that countries start building nuclear forensic capabilities without having any idea what kind of capabilities they should build. And what meant with that? When you look at the holdings in your country, the holdings of radioactive nuclear materials in the country might differ from country to country. There are countries that do not have any nuclear power plants, that do not have any holdings of nuclear materials. They might have holdings of radiological materials because of treatments in hospitals or for the industry. So I think you have to think about in your country, what are my holdings? What is the legal system that I have here? What is the law? What are the penal codes for that? What should I investigate? And based upon that, I think you should build your capabilities. And that are not always what I would call high-end capabilities. They can be very basic, what we would call core capabilities, which for most of countries would be, I think, quite enough. And only when you have like real big holdings or NPPs in your country, I think it's more important to build also advanced capabilities. On the other end, there are lots of neighboring countries in Europe or in the US or the JRC in Karlsruhe, where you can go when you have an incident with nuclear radioactive materials, and you only have the core capabilities. You can go there to ask, to request, or to have to analyze the material in such a way that you can compare it with your national holdings or with holdings of other countries. So the difference, I think, that's in a way it's a disparity, as it said, of capability, but it's also, in my opinion, very normal because it's related to what your country has in its holdings. Yeah, thank you, Andre.
Yeah, thank you. Just to pick up on one of your ideas on the importance of needs assessment. Right. So does every country need a nuclear forensic capability? Well, perhaps not. Does every country needs same kind of capabilities? Perhaps not. So it's very important to start with needs analysis. and then see how can you fill the areas for improvement that you have identified, and that can be done in different ways, such as using a tool like a self-assessment tool or any other kind of tools that would help you to do so. But then I like telling stories. So when I first started, I said, well, we do need a nuclear forensics. We did realize that in my country. And then I said, well, I'm going to go in the institute. I'm going to get a job there. I'm going to find the detector, and then I'm going to build, I'm going to do some experiments with this detector, and then publish papers, and that's going to be the forensic capabilities developed and implemented. Well, I was wrong, completely wrong. Then I said, well, maybe I could build a lab. For the lab, you need funding, you need, and there is funding. It's not a big deal to build a lab also. There is a lot of, international cooperation. There is international organizations, donor countries that can help you build a lab. That also is not that difficult. The difficult part for me was after we have built a lab and actually, let's say, authorized it, we said, well, it still doesn't work. I mean, the lab worked, but we didn't receive a lot of, cases in the lab that we were expecting to do so. So the main challenge that I have identified is it is associated with raise of awareness on the criminalization of nuclear security events. So you can have the laws, and ICSANT, the International Convention for Suppression of Acts of Nuclear Terrorism, can be a very good tool to kind of boost your legal framework if you don't have one which is at a certain level. But then you have to go out there, you have to put your boots on and go out there and speak with your national stakeholders and say, hey guys, look, there is, if somebody is carrying radioactive material for whatever reason, it is, it's not necessarily a crime, but it can be a crime. So let's open a criminal case, let's investigate, because if you don't open the criminal case, you don't know what you don't know. At least this is how it works in the civil law countries. So we did a lot of work in terms of, discussions with national authorities, specifically with the prosecutors. We discussed with judges, and then we raised awareness about this kind of crimes. Those are not crimes that happen every day. It's not a murder, it's not a drug smuggling, but it is a crime, which is, you can find articles in the criminal code within most of the legislations of the world, and they have to be aware that these criminal proceedings have to be followed in a very strict way. So raising awareness, it comes to working with people, which is quite challenging. It comes to making them understand the importance of science into that, especially forensics, and importance of following strictly the criminal legislation. And once we did that, the cases started. We started criminalizing. And when you criminalize, you find out what happened and who did it. You also prevent, because you put the criminals in jail, right? And there's also international ways to do so. There's a lot of IAEA activities that are done to raise this awareness. In the past, the ICSANT was doing a lot of work, and UNODC, I know, Artyom, you have this mock trials where you collect together experts with the judiciary, and you allow them to talk to each other and kind of exchange views and ideas and find a common lexicon. So to me, the main challenge here was not the capability, the technical capabilities, was really making everybody work as one team to first, detect the material, then criminalize, and then apply forensics to help the investigative body to find the truth and complete successfully the criminal case. Over.
Thank you so much for these comments, and I think you also already preempted my next question on what could be done to mitigate and to solve this question. But how do you see the role of international cooperation in overcoming these challenges? You mentioned briefly some European Union facilities. Thank you, Andrei, for mentioning the UNODC mock trials. But is there any other types of international cooperation that could be useful in this regard?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of going on already in the world. Where there's the International Technical Working Group Nuclear Forensic, which is focusing on collaboration of scientists on the development of investigative methods, laboratory methods, but also crime scene methods, how to build a national nuclear forensics library. And this is an organization type that already exists like for more than 25 years, almost 30 years, I think. And that this has been a very fruitful cooperation also. Within this International Technical Working Group Nuclear Forensic, we also CMX exercises are organized. That means that laboratories can participate in these exercises to check the methods, to further develop the methods, and to see whether the methods they've been developing or they've been using are in line with what other laboratories do. So that is a very fruitful collaboration. The other types of collaboration also is what the Global Initiative to Combat Nuclear Terrorism. However, the GICNT has been suspended since 2022. But André and I, we are chairing the Nuclear Forensics Working Group, and in our national capacities, we do organize like tabletop exercises. We've done some tabletop exercises on request in countries like in the Central Asia region, but also, well, the upcoming one is in the Netherlands. We're seeking these type of exercises, or developing these type of exercises in cooperation with other organizations like UNODC, UNOCT, a US State Department, Interpol. So what we're trying to bring is to bring together all kinds of expertise areas. And I must say the GICNT is more focusing on connection of the experts with law enforcement, judiciaries, and the policymakers in the country, and the other way around, because that's the role, that's the way of understanding each other, what has to be done. André stated mock trials. UNODC is organizing mock trials already for a few years. I think it's important. One of the big things we've been doing in the Netherlands, in 2014, we organized a big event called Atomic 2014, which was a huge event where all kinds of aspects of investigating an incident with nuclear material showed up, which meant at that time also we had press communication as part of the exercise, but also communication to the public, the role of the prosecutor, the role of law enforcement, the role of laboratories. And I think that's one of the methods how international cooperation can overcome these challenges. Yeah, you can assist your neighboring countries, or with collaboration within a tabletop exercise or a big event, you can start your collaboration on a different level, in my opinion. Eva. Sorry, thank you, Eva.
Yes. Yes, following at very comprehensive information and very important information on the international cooperation and how can it support. Another big organization should be mentioned, which is a leading organization also in the capacity building on nuclear forensics, which is the International Atomic Energy Agency, IAEA. IAEA has a comprehensive thematic programs for nuclear forensics, also for awareness, also for a higher level and scientific programs, so step-by-step programs and on all the different levels from basic level, medium level, and advanced level programs. I think mainly on the training programs. So the IAEA has 3 different training programs on these 3 different levels. Also a fellowship program, which is a absolutely scientific program, couple of months or 1 year long program for scientists to spend some time in an advanced laboratory and learn something more about nuclear forensics, and to develop new methods which can be transported home after that, and to strengthen the national capabilities in the scientist's own country. And other different activities has the agency, like expert missions. If a state doesn't know exactly what is forensics or what kind of capabilities are needed, or even needs a platform to collect the stakeholders, it's a possibility to request an expert mission when the IE and other external experts traveling to the state and help to identify the resources, gaps, and collecting the stakeholders and start with the forensic capacity building. Some other programs are also very useful of the IAEA, like the technical exchange visits, which is also interesting. Then beginner states or anybody who's interested in nuclear forensics capacity building can travel to another advanced state and laboratory, learn more about the techniques and the laboratory capabilities and many other things like legal framework and others, and can adapt to their state how to do it. So I think the IE has a key leading role in this activity, and the major function, of course, the IE is the international platform, also to connect the different experts and countries, more advanced and less advanced countries, if a country or state needs some support in the analysis of nuclear forensic examination. It's also a possibility in the agency or through the agency to connect to an advanced laboratory in order to get support in the analysis. This is from my side.
Thank you so much. And now I'd like to give some respite to our experts and make some comments about the role of ICSANT in facilitating international cooperation on nuclear forensics. So this convention plays an important role in this respect. As previously mentioned, the international cooperation under ICSANT comprises many chapters. Most relevant for today's event being mutual legal assistance, information exchange, and post-crisis situation. Just like Andrea, I also like examples. So I'll give you one very imaginary. Just imagine that a crime involving radioactive material happens in one country, which is state party to ICSANT. Victims of this crime are citizens of a second state party, and the radioactive material had been stolen previously from a third state party to ICSANT. Now we have these three elements in the equation. Upon taking control of the radioactive material after the crime, the first state will need to characterize material, interpret this information, as well as reconstruct the history of the material to know what it is and probably where it comes from. This information would feed afterwards the investigation, as we heard, and also will help the country to return the material to the state party or to the state that this material belongs to. This is according to ICSANT. Should the first state party not have enough capacity to perform those tasks, ICSANT offers an opportunity for the state to request the assistance and cooperation of other state parties or international organizations, for example, the IAEA. For example, how this international cooperation can translate in this case. Foreign nuclear forensic experts may come to the first country to assist, to offer their services. The third state party, you remember the one that where the radioactive material had been stolen. So this state party may send confirmation that the radioactive material actually originates from this country, while checking its nuclear forensics library. The first state party may send samples of this material to another countries for analysis, or send its report to other countries for possible comments. Then secondly, ICSANT obliged state parties to inform each other without delay in respect of the commission of offenses covered by this convention. So the second state party would be notified about this crime. It would be notified that also its citizens were victims of this crime. And so this country, the second state party, as we call it, would be also interested in obtaining nuclear forensics results first, to provide appropriate medical treatment to the victims if they are evacuated back to their home country. Furthermore, this second state party may establish jurisdiction over this crime, given the nationality of the victims, and thus would need a nuclear forensics report from the first state party to properly proceed with the investigations. Otherwise, the second state would need to obtain samples of this radioactive material to conduct the nuclear forensics analysis itself. If eventually the case comes to this country's courts, nuclear forensics experts from this first state party may be summoned as expert witnesses. It should be also emphasized that for this international cooperation under ICSANT to be effective, each state party needs to designate competent authorities and liaison points responsible for sending and receiving relevant information. This obligation is contained in Article 7.4 of ICSANT, and such designations should be sent to the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, to us, via the same email that I showed you in the beginning, and which I will also show at the end. It's UNODC-ICSANT@un.org. So I also invite our experts to share their views on this topic.
Thank you, Artyom. This was really comprehensive. I can now, while listening to you, I can realize how complicated is this example, even in theory. And we all know how even if you have a very good solution in theory, in practice it still might fail. But when it's complicated in theory, then in practice there is no way it will succeed unless you have some mechanisms such as the one you mentioned. And ICSANT, I think it's a good basis for that. Because you mentioned I love stories anyway. So once I had this conversation with my prosecutor and I said, well, first of all, I see nuclear security as a cross-border discipline. It's, we are all here in the same boat against the criminals. So ensuring this, cross-border regional and international cooperation is essential. But you need certain basis for that. So I discussed with the prosecutor that I was working with from the Directorate for Investigations of Organized Crime and Terrorism. And I asked her, well, how do you reach out to your counterparts in other countries? How can I, as an expert, talk to an expert from another country within a real case? And of course, she said, well, it comes to exchanging information that, ICSANT is offering you a basis for that. And most of the time, it is a sensitive, sometimes classified information. How do you exchange that? That's also a complicated aspect. And there are three main kind of approaches to that, as she said. First is within the bilateral or multilateral agreements, such as those existing on the level of the European Union, for example. Another one is that the 2 or 3 or more states are parties to the same convention. And here, a good example is ICSANT. If you are parties to the ICSANT, you ratify the convention, implement it into your national legislation, then it offers you a basis for such cooperation. You can just call the other country and say, hey, we're both members of ICSANT. We have this crime that relates to your country. Let's see what we can do about the crime, the people involved, and perhaps the materials. But also another point that she mentioned is if you don't have anything of those, you can just simply cooperate if another party wants to do so. And while we have these formal processes to cooperate in place, and that's excellent, there's a lot of informal communication going on as well. And I remember having a discussion with a prosecutor from the Netherlands who was in charge with investigation of war crimes, Simon Minks, and he told me that, well, there's a lot of, phone calls and SMS, because sometimes in specific cases, especially when it comes to terrorism, this communication should be fast, as you want to go and you catch the guys and you prevent the crimes, especially the terrorist acts. So in conclusion, I think ICSANT is a great tool to have this basis that allow you to facilitate the communication with the like-minded countries that you have to work with. Over.
Thank you, Andrei. Very many thanks. And I would just wonder whether other aspects would like to add something on the topic you already started, and I would like to continue So how do regional and bilateral agreements complement the broader international framework which was established by ICSANT in addressing specific challenges related to nuclear forensics?
Yeah, thank you. I think, well, André already started answering this question in his previous statement. What ICSANT provided is that there's a need for international cooperation, specific when the incidents are cross-bordering. There's information required from other countries, from other states, and this mechanism has been further developed also not only between states but also between international organizations. For instance, I think Eva already mentioned the IAEA does have the ITDB, the Incident Trafficking Database, but all these type of incidents are registered in a way, and that you can have access to it through your national focal point. So that gives you additional information about incidents that are similar or likewise. On the other hand, there are also international law enforcement organizations like Europol and Interpol. Interpol has the Geiger project, which is more focusing on intelligence side of cases that have occurred, so that you can have access to this type of information too. The information in the ITDB and Geiger do differ in that way, but when you have both of them, and have access to it through an agreement with, in this case, Interpol, it's very informative for your further investigation and very helpful for your investigation. So there's a need, and that's also shown in ICSANT, that there should be an exchange information mechanism set up between countries or between states to share critical information or intelligence related to incidents with radioactive nuclear materials. And it works, but still, I think there's much more that we can do on this topic. We'll hear later on some case, I think, from André about the cards. It's sometimes even difficult to gather information on, depending on the level of investigation you are in. You know, sometimes the high end is sometimes even more easy to access than just the daily basic information you are gathering for your investigation, because it's drop-wise in different countries. You know what I mean? So that's the challenge we face on the international collaboration. Thank you.
Thank you. And now I'd like to ask you to briefly share some examples of successful international collaboration on nuclear forensics, if possible.
Yes, actually, there are several good examples. In my case, I would like to just speak in general about some cases, because sometimes the information or any data related to the cases is as sensitive, classified, and it's not really allowed to share. So I wouldn't like to mention real countries in the stories, but I would like to mention some real examples. How successful was the international collaboration, and how crucial was the international collaboration? One is what I mentioned already, and Ed also mentioned, the incident trafficking database of the IAEA, which is the main platform, or one of the platforms, to share information and to get or request some support in nuclear forensics, especially in the origin assessment and the analysis. So within the working at the IAEA, I could see more cases when some states faced real forensic cases. So they had confiscated materials, and the criminal investigation needed, of course, information, sometimes really urgently. And then these states contacted the agency, the focal point, and requested some support through the IAEA, which was very good, actually, because we could connect these countries with, it was also already mentioned, the JRC, the Joint Research Center in Karlsruhe, which is one of the best, most advanced nuclear forensics laboratory in the world. And they also have a huge database, which is a very useful tool for origin assessment. So the connection with the advanced laboratory was working quite well, and the cases were solved, or they could support the forensic examination and analysis very successfully and effectively. And this is one platform which is really important, the international cooperation and how to help to a country with limited capabilities. Another example is that there is one country who participated in almost all the IAEA programs focusing on nuclear forensics. And in the framework of a fellowship program a couple of years ago, they really learned a lot, seemingly. And based on the examples of the other country where the host country who hosted this fellowship program, they learned how to build up forensic capabilities using special different techniques, how to set up, not how to establish a forensic lab, because it's another story. It's possible to use existing analytical techniques for forensic purposes. It's much cheaper and time consuming than just build up a forensic lab. But they learned how to do it, how to establish the forensic laboratory capabilities, including reference materials and everything. And I can tell it that after 5-6 years, this country, it was a beginner, and now this is one of the most advanced country, or has the most advanced capabilities in their region. So I think it's a very successful story for international cooperation and collaboration. But unfortunately, I don't want to mention the real countries, but this is really, for me, was a very promising and a very good experience to see this. And it was also mentioned, and I don't want to speak more about it, but the ITWG itself, the Nuclear Forensics International Technical Working Group, is a living example for the international cooperation. That is also the best technical platform for it. Thank you. Over to you.
Yes. Yeah, thank you, Eva. I think one of the great successes of the past 10 years has also been what I would call the National Nuclear Forensics Libraries. That has been started by also at the IAEA, by instance, David Smith, at that time unit head of the Nuclear Forensics Working Group at IAEA. Discussion was started there. There was a lot of discussion about should we have it, shouldn't we have it, and now it's there. I think it's been very fruitful. We also see that in the ITWIC. In the ITWIC, there has been developed what we would call a graded decision framework, which actually means that it's like a procedure when you have a national nuclear forensics libraries of your own holdings and unknown one. How do I decide whether this material is similar to one of my own holdings? And this method is it's very helpful, especially when you're starting with this type of work, and it tells you exactly which steps to make and to decide whether the material is yours, including likelihood ratios and that kind of part of the conclusions. So I think NNFL is getting more and more important nowadays. Thank you. Over.
I could follow up on that. When it comes, I mean, Eva and Ed has very comprehensively described these international mechanisms, and Artyom, this question is about the example. So I'm gonna give example now, without being judged for giving too many examples. So of course the first thing that comes in mind is the ITWG, and Eva described it quite well. But from my own personal experience, the first word that comes into my mind when it comes to international cooperation is Germany. My first case in 2010, the experts from Berlin Radiation Protection Office in Germany, Emily Kroger, Jens Eisach, and Alexander Rupp, they came to the lab and we did analysis of the case together within the bilateral country-to-country cooperation. And since then, our careers, they went separately. We've dealt with different cases, and then I I believe it was the ITWG meeting in Lyon, where Emily had presented this playing cards case, how some people used playing cards that Ed also mentioned to cheat in a gambling game. And well, I said, well, that's a nice case. I've seen the presentation. I understood the science behind the case. And basically, I forgot about it for a couple of years. But then I received a call from the airport. And I went to the airport in my country and I see cards and I see there's radiation there and I see the isotope. It was iodine 125, exactly like the one that was presented by Emily. So I knew exactly what's going on. It's not accidental. It's not medical. It's certain community in the world that smuggles this radioactive material to the state to use for illicit gambling activities. Of course, everybody in the room at the airport, all my law enforcement thought, well, this guy should be a Sherlock Holmes. He's a genius. He knows exactly what's going on just by looking at these pieces, exhibits. It wasn't the case. The case was that I had an opportunity to see this presentation at the ITWG meeting and had a discussion with the German experts. So first thing what we do, we open the case and then I have a discussion with the prosecutor and I tell her what I know. So we reach out to Germans. We reach out to Jens and Alexander. We have this call together with the judiciary and we discuss the details of the case. And this was really, really good international collaboration on nuclear forensics that has helped both countries understand more about the crime, prove the intent of the criminals, and show to the world that this is a kind of international phenomena. This was actually very successfully demonstrated at the General Conference at the IAEA last year within the side event we had jointly between Romania and Germany. So I think one of the main lessons learned is that, these international activities where nuclear forensic practitioners, both technical scientific community as well as legal community, can come together and talk about their experiences, about the criminal cases that they had investigated, share legal lessons learned, but also share the technicalities, the scientific part of it, because these cases that are being shared help countries more successfully investigate their in case they meet a similar material. And we all know there's not so many materials, nuclear or other radioactive materials types in the world, types of those materials. So there are a lot of cases which are similar. They're really what we have to do here is to make sure we exchange this information in a proper way. And again, when it comes to platforms, I think the ITWG, the International Technical Working Group on Nuclear Forensics, which is chaired by the US and the European Commission, is one of the greatest platforms for such information exchange. Over.
Thank you, experts. Dear public, I'm pretty much aware of that we are running slightly over the time. Please bear with us. I hope you're enjoying the show. We have just a couple of questions. And I would ask our expert to very briefly share some examples where international collaboration in nuclear forensics was desirable but not yet resorted to. And were any specific lessons learned in these cases? Very briefly.
Yes, I have one example, but again, briefly and general, without mentioning real data. Sorry for that. But one case what I could see was not solved, but was not supported internationally because of a challenge, which is also an important challenge. That the sample, and I would like to stay in the field of material analysis and how to support the analysis. Again, a state with limited capability requested support from an advanced laboratory, but it was not possible at the end because there were two challenges. One challenge is that it should be considered the nuclear or other radioactive material is also an evidence. So should be handled as an evidence by the legal proceeding and legal system and laws, which belongs to the chain of custody and other rules following the evidence. And following the national laws and legislation, it was impossible to send out the sample as an evidence from the country to another country for analysis. So it was one big challenge, and it is a challenging area, I think. And another challenge in the story otherwise is that the transport of these materials, especially for nuclear materials, but also for radioactive sources, can be also challenging because it needs a very special licenses, permission, which is very complicated, and it should be considered this sample is an unknown sample. So it's not an official sample with documentation and permissions and licenses. So therefore, the transport is even more challenging. So these two parameters or problems caused this case was not solved but not supported internationally.
Yeah. Yes. Thank you, Eva. I think in the Netherlands we have had the same kind of issue with transporting materials. We do have agreement nowadays with the JRC in Karlsruhe. It's a neighboring country. That's, in a way, it's more easy for us that way. So we do now have an agreement with them so that whenever an incident occurs and we should have to rely on their capabilities, we're able to transport the material on a proper way within the licenses that are required for this, and also maintaining chain of custody. So that's a brief short answer on, yeah. And a follow-up on Eva's remarks. Thank you.
Thank you so much for sharing these lessons. And now we're coming to the final question in our event. So we talked a lot about different stakeholders involved in nuclear forensics, and what role do these stakeholders play in fostering cooperation among states in the realm of nuclear forensics? For example, it could be national forensics institutions, other national authorities such as Ministry of Foreign Affairs, of Justice, and so on, and of course international organizations.
Yeah. Well, I must say the Netherlands, we are of course a relatively small country with less capabilities than, for instance, the JRC has. What we do see in the Netherlands, there's a collaboration going on between the National Forensics Laboratory. We only have one in the Netherlands, National Forensic Laboratory, but also other authorities like the National Radiation Laboratory, the MFA, when there's an exchange of information required between different countries. My institute is part of the Ministry of Justice, so that's easy to be done, but there should be a good connection with law enforcement, because law enforcement most of the time is Home Affairs or a different ministry. That should be done. And on the other end, international organizations are proven to be very valuable for countries like the IEA, but also, the UNODC, for instance, for these type of gatherings. But also Interpol is important for countries like ours. On the other end, the ITWIC has been mentioned earlier already. Is very fruitful, but also the GICNT, or at least this follow-up that we're working on now, has been very helpful, especially for developing a good practice and connecting the experts with policymakers and lawyers. So I think that's a thing that can be done relatively easy when you have the right persons on the right table in a country. Thank you.
Thank you, and following you, I would like to mention now my own experience in Hungary and a real example finally, connected to the GICNT actually. Hungary is extremely grateful to the GICNT because we hosted a GICNT workshop and tabletop exercise in 2014, and the platform of this workshop, we could start our real national cooperation in nuclear security. So after that, short time after, the National Nuclear Security Working Group was established in Hungary, and we started to work on our national response plan, and we strengthened the national response capabilities. And it was really absolutely thanks to the GICNT, because it was the platform to meet scientists and law enforcement personnel and other people from a higher decision-making level, which was before this event, it was almost impossible. So that was a huge help for us, and therefore our Ministry of Foreign Affairs are highly committed for any international cooperation and supporting and participating at these kind of events like GICNT events. And some other national stakeholders, how can connect or support the international cooperation is, again, I mentioned already the regulatory body. In Hungary, we have the regulatory body is very strong. It has a key role, for example, for the international cooperation and also in the forensic area to find the owner or the original licensee and contact them in order to receive the sample if we have the origin of the confiscated sample. So, and some other stakeholders who are connected to this area, like Custom Office and others connected to the ITDB system of the agency and the IE program. So in general, there are many stakeholders who are promoting or committed to work on international level. But specifically for Hungary, this GICNT workshop was very important. Thank you.
Just very briefly, Artyom, to follow up on what Eva has said, I will address this from very technical scientific perspective. I think one of the key components in fostering this international cooperation is the fact that the people who are involved in nuclear forensics, they know each other. If you ask me, does country X has nuclear forensics? The first thing I think about is, do I know somebody from country X? And the reason is that we are a very small family, and I can say family, which was connected through the International Technical Working Group on Nuclear Forensics, which also gave us, I mean, nuclear forensic experts, technical people, to meet together, to work together on the same topics. For example, ITWG has something called the Collaborative Material Exercise Series. It's an opportunity for different labs to work together on analyzing similar materials, and then they have a data review meeting where they can all come together in one place and talk about their outcomes of their analytical measurements. And that's a great opportunity to connect. Ed also mentioned nuclear forensic libraries. ITWG has a different exercise, and I'm pretty sure, Jim Bogart and John Schwantes on the CMX and Jim Bogart on this libraries exercise called Galaxy Serpent. They can talk a lot about that. And so Galaxy Serpent is basically to simulate the building of a nuclear forensic library based on fictional data. And that's another opportunity to engage virtually. Everybody is welcome to participate, exchange ideas and views, and most importantly, know the people. And as I say, when I say family, I also mean the trust, because we build trust together, we know each other, and when it comes to the point where we have to cooperate within solving a puzzle of a real radiological or nuclear crime, we have everything in place to address it together. Thank you.
Thank you, Ed, Eva, and Andre, for these comments. And now we are coming to the conclusion of our event. I would like to invite you to make just very brief, maybe 1 or 2 sentences, concluding remarks, maybe something important you would like to convey regarding nuclear forensics and international cooperation, and also ICSANT.
Can I start? I think one of the most important things is collaboration. You don't do that, I think it's the best and it's very fruitful to have collaboration with other institutions, other countries, other mechanisms. And it helps you with making the next step as a country or an investigator. Yeah, over.
Thank you, Ed. Yes, absolutely. I wanted to tell the same. Collaboration and cooperation is extremely important, a crucial point to learn from each other and how to support each other. That's to work together. It's really important. And I would like to mention what Thank you, Andre. It was so nice, the previous comment from you. The forensic is really a family. The forensic team is a forensic scientist is a family. So it's also something like an advertisement. It's a good, very good point to join to this nice family. That's really good field. Thank you. Over to you, Andre.
Thank you. I can only subscribe to this. And I would just like to add also, for me, there's no many people in science nowadays. And for me, forensics is, I would just quote Klaus Meyer, not exactly, but I will try to quote, to say what he said at some point, is that forensics is a very attractive way to get people to study science. So you show, okay, you can do this crime scene things and, the CSI and then the kids, they will ask you, what do I have to do to become a nuclear forensic scientist? And then you say, well, you study chemistry and physics. It's not that easy, but then in the end, you can become a nuclear forensic scientist. So it's a very attractive way to attract people to study science, technology, engineering, and math.
Yeah.
Fantastic comments. So thank you very much, Eva, Andre, and Ed, for this actually fantastic inputs, comments, and insights, examples. I would also like to thank our audience for this steadfast patience and for your time. We are slightly over it. And I would like to reiterate that your questions to experts can be sent to our email, dc-icsant@un.org, which I will pull again to your screens. Please also know that the recording of this event will soon be made available on our ICSANT website. You can see it on the right hand side of the slide. So please feel free to rewatch it and share it with your colleagues and friends who couldn't make it today. With that, I would like to just add that we will continue the virtual speaker series with new events to discover many other faces of ICSANT and nuclear terrorism. So stay tuned and have a wonderful weekend. Goodbye.